Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to this YouTube channel. It's your guy Igor here. Today's video, we are going to be talking about status in Canada. We'll be talking about permanent residency, citizenship, postgraduate work permit, open work permit, and we'll also be talking about student status in Canada and what is the definition of a legal status in Canada. Just in case you're wondering where I am at my backyard of the place that I've just purchased here in Canada. I'll show you this place maybe a little bit later on this channel. Today we are talking about the legal status. What is it? It's a status in Canada that allows you to be here legally. Now, immigrants take it in their own perspective. Sometimes when you see someone without permanent residency, people would say, well, you don't have a status in Canada. Or for example, if you're you're not a citizen or permanent resident, then they might say, well, you don't have a legal status, which is wrong, by the way. You have a legal status in Canada as long as you have a valid visitor's visa, work permit, student visa. So you're legally allowed to enter and leave the country. That's called the legal status. Why it sucks not having a status in Canada? Well, first of all, if you don't have a status in Canada, you're here not legally, which means is you cannot leave the country, because if you do leave, then you cannot re-enter the country. If you do not have a status in Canada, you cannot drive a car. So you cannot have a driver's license, because, for example, if you are having a work permit like I used to have in Canada, when I applied for a driver's license, it's regularly valid for like 5 years before you have to renew it, but they give you for the length of your work permit or the length of your study permit. So really, you have to go and renew it later on because it will expire. So without a status in Canada, you really cannot drive a car, at least legally. And if you get pulled over, then you get arrested. Without a status in Canada, there is no free medicine. So you cannot go to a doctor for free. Like everyone, like most of the people who are living here, for example in Alberta, when I had a work permit, I could still go to a doctor. I still had the health card. For like when you have a legal status in Canada, you can still see a doctor, but if you don't, then you're on your own. And if you do see a doctor, you have to pay from your pocket, because the medicine here is actually really expensive. The reason why it's free is that the government compensates the doctors, private doctors and everyone from the provincial budget. You know, provinces pay for that, and if you don't have a status, then nobody pays for you. You have to pay for yourself. And here to say hello to a doctor can be $70, and to go to a hospital can cost you like $15,000. You don't have a legal status. The rule of minimum wage doesn't really apply to you, because you're not really allowed to even work in Canada. And if you do work and you get caught again, you can be deported, unless you try to apply for refuge or whatever, but most likely you will. So that employers who are employing those people who are illegally in Canada, they might even pay you below the minimum wage, which is actually minimum. If it's below minimum wage, it's really difficult to survive. Again, you don't have the medicine, you're not allowed to drive a car, so you're screwed without a status. You might be asked about your status in Canada, and then what? Then that's why there is no point of not having a status in Canada when such a beautiful country. Even though Canada, I heard, has illegal immigrants, people who are staying here without a status, which kind of is a sad situation. For example, in the US, it's more like a necessity, because their system there is so screwed up. It's so difficult to immigrate there, so people are forced to do that. They're coming there. But in Canada, I really don't understand how that happens, but it does happen, unfortunately. Okay, enough of sadness, guys. Let's talk a little bit about something cheering up. For example, if you have a student visa or you have a work permit, you know, you meet another immigrant and they say you don't have a status. I met my first co-worker who found out that I have my working visa. He said, well, you don't have a status, which is nonsense, because you do have. But why do they say that? Well, first of all is that when you have a permanent residency, let's say, unlike having a work permit or post-graduation work permit, that's what the students get when they graduate. That's what I had. So the benefit of this video, guys, is that I've been through every stage. I've been in Canada. I haven't been here as a visitor, so I didn't visit this country before I came here. I came here as an international student. I was on a study permit, student visa. I was on a post-graduation work permit. I was on a work permit that they canceled even while you're studying. You're allowed to work part-time. So that work permit, that post-graduation work permit, and then I had to apply for permanent residence. So I've been through all of those those stages. And the reason why they say that it sucks is that when you cross the border, when you go back to Canada, you really need a sticker in your passport that you have your work permit. Because if you do not have that, like, what is work permit? It's basically like a paper like this, and it says your name and it says the validity period of it, but you cannot re-enter the country. So you really need a sticker in your passport. Each time you enter the country, there is an immigration officer who is going to ask you questions. Where are you studying if you're a student, or where are you working if you're working? Like, you really have to go and remove your glasses to talk to an immigration officer, possibly even take a picture of you, possibly, it's really a fearful moment where you go and someone pulls you over and you've been to the country for many years and they say, what's your reason of coming to Canada? Where do you stay? Where do you study? Where do you work? What do you do? And you have to explain yourself, and that sucks. It is also more like an emotional thing for new immigrants that, it's a little bit stressful when you look like everybody else. Everything is basically almost the same. Even, Canadians don't really treat you differently from anyone else, because nobody, really knows except the government what your status is, and nobody really cares here, but you know it, and deep inside you feel a little bit of an inferiority complex and a little bit fearful, of the things. For example, if you get into a trouble on the street, and that's the story I heard from some people in Ontario, they were saying stay away from some local gangs, because what can happen is they might find out that you don't say anyone what's your status in Canada. You might get in, they might try to get some money out of you or get into a fight with you, and if you do get into a fight with that kind of temporary status in Canada, it can be cancelled, you can be deported. You are like a little bit fearful for everything you do in the country, and you're trying to, avoid anything and everything that is possible to avoid, not to get into any kind of trouble. International students are not allowed to work more than 20 hours while they're studying. Temporary workers in Canada, they need a MIA to extend their work permit. It's a little bit complicated. So the fear is that each time you enter country, you have a fear and you have to face the immigration officer, and you're always worried what if they don't let you in. And at the same time, the time is ticking. It has a certain period, it goes off, and then you are no longer allowed to enter the country unless you renew it. So it's like literally you are hanging up in the air, sitting on your bags, and you're like, well, I have a little bit of time left, and then I have to leave. The other problem of having no status or temporary status in Canada is employers might not want to hire you. Like, they see your working visa, they see it's valid for 1 year, and they're searching for someone who will be working for them for next 5, possibly even 10 years. Employers here like the long term, and you don't have a status. They look at it and they are like, okay, why should we hire this individual if we might have to sponsor this individual, or this individual might leave the country and we will have to hire someone else. Like, why would I hire someone like that, right? So that's another concern that might be there on getting a good job. Now let's talk a little bit about good things. Once I got my permanent residency, things changed drastically. You're coming to Canada, you don't go through the same line as everyone else do. You go through like another line where they just check your documents and they say welcome home, which just, after years studying in Canada, after years of working and going through all the hassles of immigration and spending all of the money, you are, it's such a good feeling when finally you're like, they tell you welcome home, and you don't have to explain who you are or what you are doing or how much money you're carrying with you. No, you still have to declare it, but I mean, you don't have to prove yourself to anyone, and you just come there and the immigration officer looks at your document, your PR card, and says, hey, welcome home. And that's it. And you just walk in, and it's just an amazing feeling. If you haven't followed this channel long enough, or you haven't seen all of my videos, I came to Canada in August 2012. It was like a long time ago now, right? I came here as an international student. I studied in Centennial College on a 2-year postgraduate program, Global Business Management. Then I got my working visa. I moved to Alberta, and that's where my home is now, here in Calgary. And I worked. I got my work experience, and when I got enough work experience, I improved my English. I also applied for AINP, Alberta Immigration Nominee Program, but that program was too slow. And once I applied for that, I went and I applied for permanent residency through express entry, when the conditions were way tougher than they are right now for international students. And that's basically how I immigrated. By the time I got my permanent residency, I already had it. I had the AINP call me. The immigration officer called me somebody from Alberta government and says, "Hi, how you doing? I heard you already got your permanent residency." I said, "Well, yeah, guys, you're too slow. I already got it from my federal government and not provincial." So I told them just to cancel it and go ahead with the next candidate. And that was amazing. I got my permanent residency closer. I believe, was it 2015? I think that's when I got my permanent residency and got my citizenship just this year. Yeah, this year. Just recently. All I'm saying, friends, don't forget to subscribe. I want to read your comments about status in Canada. What is your status in Canada? Do you find any challenges from locals, from Canadians? Do you get any kind of, disrespect or whatever? What is the opinion going around? And of course, ask me questions. I want to read your comments because I see people commenting about all different things, and the most impressive thing of this channel is a blessing of meeting subscribers who have been watching this channel for past year or half a year or few years since I started, and they are already in Canada. Some of them are coming here on permanent residence. Some of you guys are coming here as students, as workers, and it's just amazing that so many people chose Calgary, to move to Calgary after watching this channel. It's amazing, it's a really blessing to make videos for you guys. So don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in Canada. Don't be like one of those guys who are, "Hey man, I watched your video, I came to Canada, now I saw you, I subscribed." So subscribe right now. We'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. It's your guy Igor. See you soon. So excited. Assembling furniture in my house. Beautiful stuff. Right now it's a mess, but I might show you a little bit of house tour later on. See ya.